And at the beginning of it all, a group of humans attack a legendary dragon, who in turn does not understand why the humans are trying to kill him. After all, he has never done anything against humanity. On the contrary, he has even been an ally of humans a few times. In this, he is content with not receiving justifications from humans, and begins to surrender himself to death, handing over his soul to the Reapers to take to the underworld, because only then will he finally be able to have his eternal rest. And after that, he reincarnates into a baby, and then, his new mother gives him the name Dolan, and introduces him to her family. And after a few more years since his birth, Dolan is approached by a girl named Ari, who goes to see what happened. After all, his mind seems to be elsewhere. However, Dolan reassures her, saying that everything is fine. And moving on, Dolan comments more about Varen, the place where he was born after dying as a dragon. In this case, Varen is a small village on the northern border of the continental kingdom of Arkrest, and the only major industry in the area is agriculture, so Dolan gets up every day and heads out to the fields to earn his living as a farmer. And although he is only 16, Dolan explains that in the village, people are considered adults at that age, and it is normal for them to be living on their own, just like he himself, who left home last year. And when he meets up with his brother to go fishing, Dolan is asked about the swamp he was supposed to investigate the next day, to which he explains that about a month ago, the lizards disappeared from the swamp, so they need to do something about it. But upon hearing this, Dolan's brother says that this should be a task for the garrison, not the villagers, so he says again that there is no reason for Dolan to go to the place to do the work on his own. However, Dolan reminds him that Captain Balin and the others are already busy protecting the village, and so he must do something to help. And after meeting with Albert and Malida, they briefly talk about the training that the two will give to the village children, but soon after, Dolan leaves them behind and returns home. In this, he reflects on the village's problems, and explains that there are usually several monsters and bandits in the surrounding area. Therefore, the village's soldiers end up being limited and cannot solve all of Varen's problems, since their military power does not even come close to that of the city. And because of this, they already expect the villagers to protect themselves on their own sometimes. And while he does his housework, Ari appears there, and calls him to the magic training he was supposed to do that day. And when he sees her there, he deduces that she went to his house just to pick him up, but Ari changes the subject and says that she just took advantage of a break she had in her chores to pick him up. And when he arrives at the appointed place, Dolan unleashes his magic, leaving Ari impressed, and his tutor praises him, saying that his offensive magic is truly perfect. However, Dolan attributes this to her excellent teachings. And as for the lady, she decides to start practicing magical medicine, which in this case, is the area in which he has the most difficulty. After class, he walks through the village again, until suddenly, the village chief comes up to him and introduces him to Christina, a swordswoman warrior who will be spending some time in their village. He explains that the girl is a young noblewoman, so he asks Dolan to treat her with the utmost respect possible, and then the two greet each other, but soon the girl leaves him and continues on her way with the village chief. And as for Dolan, he goes back to working in agriculture. And on the way, he comments on the risk of freezing to death in the village during the winter, since that time of year is very harsh, as is the summer, which is incredibly hot. And when comparing his current life to when he was a dragon, Dolan states that humans do indeed live in a very hostile environment. With that said, he heads to his parents' house, and is greeted by Marco, his younger brother. And as for his parents, they are both happy to see that he really came to visit them. Then, they all sit down to dinner together, and in the middle of the meal, Dolan's father explains that living alone is indeed very relaxing, but it can also be very lonely at times, and so, he suggests that Dolan find a wife who cooks well, just like Dylan did. And upon hearing this, Dolan says that his brother also gives him this advice from time to time. However, he says that he wants to enjoy the single life for a little while longer. And as for Marco, he comments on the swamp problem that Dolan was supposed to solve the next day, to which Dolan says that he really intends to go to the place. And upon hearing this, his mother shows that she is worried about him. After all, the place is very far from there, in addition to having a very dangerous road. And as for Dolan, he makes it clear that he does not intend to take any risks. After all, he will only approach the swamp to take a quick look. And meanwhile, the boy's father claims that he is already a grown man, therefore, he does not intend to interfere in his decisions, and leaves him free to do exactly what he wants. However, he asks Dolan to return safely, to prevent his mother from worrying. In this, Dolan promises that he will return to tell everything he will experience there, but the next day, he is approached by a horde of people, and among them, a nun named Letitia approaches him to give him a blessing from the goddess. As for the magic tutor, she tells him that she has a bad feeling about this trip, so she asks instructs him to be as careful as possible. And finally, Eri gives him a lunchbox that she made exclusively for him. With that, Dolan leaves the village, and on the way to the swamp, he explains that the lizards of the place used to interact with the village of Varen, until one day, they simply stopped appearing, causing strangeness in all the inhabitants of the village, and since they could not leave it alone, Dolan offered to investigate what happened. And when he arrives at the swamp, he discovers that the power of the earth elementals is very strong while that of the water is weakening, therefore, the lizards end up not being able to live there anymore. At that moment, he remembers the prediction that Maguru had made and starts to pay more attention to the place. After all, the lady is never wrong in her guesses. At that moment, Dolan hears a noise coming from the vegetation, and draws his sword, to intercept the enemy in time. And when the being finally appears, he discovers that it is a Lamia, which in this case, is a snake girl. As for the girl, she wonders what to do with him now that the boy has invaded her area, and then she remembers the seduction moves she learned from her mother and decides to replicate them. However, Dolan doesn't understand anything about what is happening and says that those moves are just strange. At this, the girl gets tired and explains to him that she doesn't intend to fight, and in the middle of the conversation, they are surprised by another monster, who tries to attack her unawares. However, Dolan acts quickly and protects her, taking the girl to a safe place. She asks what it is, and Dolan explains that it is an earth elemental that has lost control over itself, and with that, he informs her that there used to be lizards in that swamp, until one day, they all suddenly disappeared. And according to what he thinks, Dolan believes that this earth elemental is the cause of the lizard's disappearance. Then, he remembers an earthquake that occurred some time ago there, which consequently ended up affecting the elementals, causing them to no longer be able to return to normal. During the conversation, the girl introduces herself as Selena and says she can use magic. Upon hearing this, Dolan proposes that the two fight together. However, Selena reminds him that Lamias like her are earth monsters, so her magic won't be able to cause as much damage to the other earth elemental. However, she remembers that her racial spell, which is unique to Lamias, can work on an earth elemental, so the two begin to work together to face the monster. But in the middle of the battle, Selena wonders if she can really fight alongside him. After all, the two have just met and still don't trust each other. That said, she sees Dolan's signal, and then the two go on the attack, with Selena trapping the earth elemental monster with a cursed snake, and with Dolan splitting the creature in half by imbuing draconic magic into his sword. And upon seeing the monster being split in two, Selena is relieved. However, she ends up buried with the monster's sand, which makes her slightly upset, at which point Dolan goes to her to see if everything is okay, and takes the opportunity to thank her for her help, because without her magic, he would not have been able to finish off the creature. That said, they head together to a cave in search of shelter, and then, Selena notices that Dolan is not really afraid of her, and he in turn explains that Selena is different from the Lamias he knows. After all, they tend to be more cautious and aggressive with humans. That said, he asks what she is doing there, because as far as he knows, there is no village of Lamias around the place. Then, Selena explains that the Lamias have a rule, which says that they must leave to look for a husband as soon as they turn 17. After all, their race is composed exclusively of women, and in some rare exceptions, they give birth to a boy. And continuing with the history of her race, Selena explains that the Lamia race was created when a human woman was cursed, and this curse ended up being passed on to other women, who began to be born half snake and half woman, and in addition, all of their bodily fluids contain poison. Therefore, they need to choose a strong husband who has a body resistant to poison, otherwise, the man may die from their poison. And upon hearing this, Dolan realizes that they really suffer more than other races to find a mate, since they have to follow all these rules. And when he finishes preparing the food, Dolan serves her plate, and says that he used to eat with his family around the hot pot in the winter. And as for Selena, she notices him with a gentle smile on his face as he talks about his family, and realizes that he really loves them very much. At this, Dolan realizes that the lonely dragon in the cave that he once was, no longer exists. And seeing him with such a thoughtful look, Selena asks if something happened, to which Dolan says that it was nothing serious. After all, he was just thinking that she is right, because he does indeed love his family very much. And the next morning, they prepare to say goodbye, to which Dolan says that he will return to his village, and as for her, Selena says that she will head south in search of a husband. And that was another video. If you liked it and want more videos like this, subscribe, and leave your like. Here on the screen there is another video for you. Until next time.